I'm Charlotte, and you're watching The Ugly Atheist. Today's episode is going to be about an atheist's perspective, this atheist perspective on Buddhism. I don't know a whole lot about Buddhism, but everything that have heard about it has been great. I hear nothing but good things about it from its practitioners and other people alike. But I uh, I have a bit of a different take on Buddhism, and I want to go into that. Um, so, first of all, in trying to define Buddhism, there are so many schools of thought, and Buddhism is such a convoluted body of philosophies. They all kind of pivot around central points, which helps clarify things. But over the centuries and millennia, I guess there have been so many philosophers that have put their 2 cents in regarding what Buddhism really is and the philosophy and what enlightenment is. So I'm going to try to simplify that a little bit before I get into my take on things. But so I hear on YouTube there are Buddhist monks that talk about what their life is like in a monastery or living in a living with other monks, Buddhist monks, and they seem to focus on Buddhism being three things: a philosophy, a lifestyle, and a religion. Um, and it's centered around the idea of self. They believe that the self is always changing, and thus it's really unknowable. And the only thing you can know for certain about self is suffering. That's the one thing that can't be argued away or rationalized away, or it's not something that can be philosophized about. And what I mean by that is any other experience you have, someone could create a philosophy to cast doubt on your experience. Like, are your eyes deceiving you, or things are not always what they seem? But suffering is the one thing that you know for sure is a reality. And so, based on that, Buddhism tries to find a path to alleviate that suffering. And they call it enlightenment when you've reached the point where you no longer suffer. Because the underlying premise is that suffering is caused by greed. There is no other cause of suffering other than greed. You want something and you can't have it, and so you suffer. You want, and you don't necessarily have to want bad things, but just the idea of desiring something and not being able to have it causes suffering. Um, and of course, suffering is also, I'm not sure how this plays into suffering in the physical sense when you're physically in a lot of pain. I'm not sure how that is caused by greed, but I'm sure there's a causal chain of events that they have arrived upon. It's not readily apparent to me, but so the solution, they say, is to stop desiring. Simple as that. To stop wanting things. And to do that, you need to follow, there's an eightfold path. But first of all, let's go over the Four Noble Truths. This is the foundation of Buddhism. Let me pull that up here. A common rendering. So this is from, what is this? I think it's a website called Learn Religions. And it says, a common rendering of the truths tell us that life is suffering. Suffering is caused by greed. Suffering ends when we stop being greedy. And the way we do that is to follow something called the Eightfold Path. A moral formal setting. So here's the four noble truths. Number one, the truth of suffering. You need to understand and accept that suffering is a truth. They call it dukkha, the truth of the cause of suffering, which is greed. Then you need to, the noble truth number three, you need to learn the truth of the end of suffering, which is nirodha. Nirodha. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And then the fourth noble truth is the truth of the path that frees us from suffering. So after you've ended suffering, you have to get on the path that frees you from all suffering, which they call enlightenment. And enlightenment is a permanent state. It's like you've crossed through a threshold where you can no longer go back to suffering. Suffering, you are suffer free for the rest of your days. And to get to noble truth number 4, you need to follow the eightfold path. Now, these to me are, let's see, okay. So the Eightfold Path is composed of 8 primary teachings that Buddhists follow and use in their everyday lives. We have number 1, right view or right understanding. And when they say right, they mean wise, I guess, like a wise view and a wise understanding of the true nature of reality. And then we have number 2, right intention. So that's the unselfish desire to realize enlightenment. We'll come back to that because that's problematic. So number 3, right speech or wise speech, using speech compassionately. Number 4, right action, using ethical conduct to manifest compassion. And by right action, they break it down into number 1, not killing, number 2, not stealing, number 3, not misusing sex, number 4, not lying, and number 5, not abusing intoxicants. So those kind of, to me, sound a little bit like the Noahide laws that we discussed last episode. Then we've got right livelihood or wise livelihood, making a living through ethical and non-harmful means. So I guess you have to find employment in a company or an industry that is ethical and doesn't harm others. Number 6, right effort or wise effort, cultivating wholesome qualities and releasing unwholesome qualities. So you're basically curating your ethos, your virtues. Number 7, right mindfulness, whole body and mind awareness. So this is where I guess meditation probably comes in on all of these steps, but being aware of yourself requires intense focus on self. And number 8, right concentration, meditation or some other dedicated, concentrated practice. All right. So, Buddhism, as you can see by all of that, has a lot to do with self. It is sort of inwardly focused and has an inward benevolence in facing virtue, I guess. And this is good in the sense that we do need to understand our motives and understand, break down our behaviors and thoughts into sort of smaller pieces that we can understand. And in the case of Buddhism, they break it down to the core foundation is that we understand that greed is causing our suffering. So their solution is to stop desiring things, and once you get to the point where you've stopped desiring anything, then you have reached the point of enlightenment and you've reached the point where you no longer suffer. The problem that I see with this whole philosophy is that it is remarkably self-centered. I don't see, in all of the things I've read about Buddhism, I don't see anything where you actively engage in helping your fellow human, your fellow man. In fact, there's a practice that was, I think it's outlawed, but it was Japanese Buddhists followed this thing called Soku Shinbutsu, where they would get to the point where they self mummify. They will restrict their diet for years to eat only things that uh, basically fill their bodies with toxins so that bacteria and parasites and other animals won't eat them when they decompose. So they're self mummified, and they get lowered into a small stone hole in the ground that's just tight enough to sit in the lotus position. The hole is sealed up while they're still alive, and they just meditate and meditate. Each day they ring a bell until, and there's a tiny little straw through which they breathe air, oxygen. And then on the day that the bell stops ringing, they know that they've been dead. And so after 1,000 days or so, then they exhume the monk, and they examine his state of mummification. If he's successful, then he gets lauded throughout the monk community. And if he shows signs of decay, then he's not celebrated, and he's still honored, but not to the same degree. And he's kind of just uh, brushed off as a side note in history, footnote in monk history. To me, all of this self focus seems, things like Soku Shinbutsu is almost the ultimate practice in hubris, where you're so focused on yourself that you have removed yourself from the human population, and you are no longer useful to humanity. You're useful to yourself as you delve into your inner thoughts and you work towards purification and enlightenment. That's great. We all need to do that from time to time. But I think um, compared to something like Christianity, which is, it does not have an inward benevolence. It does to a degree, but the beauty of Christianity is it has an outward benevolence where it's focused on not just the suffering of self and how to alleviate that, but the suffering of the world, of others. That's why we see uh, Christians are the only religion that actively goes into the worst places in the world. They'll go into inner cities and try to convert or bring the love of God into the gangs, the cities, the crime areas. They go into the remote jungles in South America and the rainforest to try to reach uh, tribes of people that have not been uh, been taught the gospel. Um, say what you will about the message of Christianity, but they're going in with the heart of love, and they're making a difference in the world. Like you don't see, you know, the Siddhartha School for the Blind, for example, but you do see like St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and this the Christian presence in the world has been as horrible as some parts of Christianity are. I think Christianity is a net positive for the world in terms of really alleviating suffering. You know, like if somebody is dying of thirst, or some community is starving or going through a famine, and the Christian church will go in there and provide food and water. Meanwhile, the Buddhists are over here saying, I got me taken care of. I got, I'm not suffering anymore. So that's one down. You don't have to worry about me. Like, good for you. In my opinion, all of these religious philosophies, there's cores of good, of usefulness in them. And, um, but I think all of them in their own way, shape and form, they go to extremes, and I think we do well to try to avoid some of those extremes. But yeah, I think there's a place in the human community for religion, and I think it does a lot of good. But religions like Buddhism that turn your focus too much inward, um, and I'm sure if there's any Buddhists who are watching this, I doubt it because nobody watches this. If you have some comments about what your experience about Buddhism is, and do Buddhists spend any significant amount of time reaching out to others, to hurting people, and trying to offer a message of hope, love, and peace? So write that in the comments. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now. My name is Charlotte. You're watching The Ugly Atheist. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe and share this show with somebody you wish to annoy. And I will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching.